Hello, Erev Tov. Welcome everyone to our Sunday evening webinar here in Israel. Afternoon in the East Coast and morning in the West Coast of the United States. Early evening in England. And thank you everybody for joining. Exciting webinar here today with Amir Balaban, one of our senior naturalists, ecologists, a television nature personality here in Israel. Looking forward to his documentary of what's been going on in the Jerusalem hills. You'll all recall we had a severe blaze, quite a large fire towards the end of last summer. And Amir will be reviewing that and telling us how nature has regenerated and what's going on there. Thanks everybody. I'm Jay Shofet, coming to you from Tel Aviv. Avi Sadiv is doing back office in Toronto as usual. Thank you very much, Avi, and the folks at CSPNI. Thank you all the folks at Nature Israel, formerly ASPNI in the United States. Appreciate all the good work all of our incredible board members are doing all over the world, in the UK as well, and in France. Hello, Miroslav in Belgrade. Everybody, please let us know who you are, where you're from in the chat. Always like to see people from around the world. Michael and Madison. That's great, everybody. Thanks very much. We'll get started going in just a minute or two. Let people join. Already up to close to 100 people. So thank you all very much. And I guess we're live on Facebook. So yes, we are.
Yes,
so
we are.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone who's on Facebook. And we'll get going in a minute. It's wow, Israel's really cold weather broke this week. We're moving into warm weather already, but wow, we had the longest, coldest spell in March since 1910 on record. It's been pretty cold in Tel Aviv, and it was in Jerusalem last week, and wow. And even the end, and it's been that way for a couple weeks. So just proves there's no global warming. We can focus now on nature conservation and biodiversity laws. Just joking. But that is the other side of the coin, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The larger mammals that are moving into the Jerusalem hills, the smaller critters that are all around. I think we're looking at one of them right now. Amir will tell us what exactly this little guy is. And I don't think it's a Komodo dragon, but it's not my strong suit. We are, what time is it now? A couple minutes after the hour, people are still coming in. Maybe we'll get moving and respect the time of the people that are here already. Amir will talk for 45 minutes and take questions as usual. Thanks everybody again for joining, and excited to get this webinar kicked off. Amir Balaban is a longtime birder with the SPNI, but he's far more than a birder. He directs our urban nature initiative. One of the more important things we do in SPNI right now is to advance the cause of nature in the urban areas of Israel. Nature isn't just something out there that you drive to and experience, but it's right in everybody's backyard, in the parks and in the nature sites in the cities. Many of you know that we run in Jerusalem, the Jerusalem Bird Observatory, which Amir used to direct, was one of the founders of. Really part of his life legacy, an incredible nature site right next to the Knesset. If you're in Israel, please come visit and do it early in the morning. You can watch bird banding, and it's a very incredible community educational site. And perhaps even more important in the scheme of the world is the Gazelle Valley Park, which Amir was also the founder of, led a battle through SPNI and with the local residents of Jerusalem for a decade in the mid-2000s, almost a decade, I think, of battling until 2015. The Jerusalem municipality, but with us as the people that run it, they opened up this incredible urban nature site called Gazelle Valley. It's not exactly a park. It's a place where we breed gazelles to return them to the wild. And it's right there in the middle of Jerusalem. Another place, another must-see place. Tov, we're well over 100 people now. People still joining, but we'll let Amir go. He's not just the director of urban nature. As I said, he's a very experienced naturalist and knows Israeli nature. left and right, up and down, back and forward, and is going to talk a little bit about the biodiversity in the Jerusalem Hills and how it's all recovered after last summer's fire. So Amir, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jay, for the intro. I'm happy to be here with friends of SPNI, English-speaking friends from all over the world. It's been a hectic year, and you know, we're entering our spring season, and in the Mediterranean habitats, spring is one of the most intensive times of the year. Usually after winter rains, the Israeli nature wakes up. Sadly, previous summer, we've had quite a few blazes all around the country. A part of the challenges we face as a conservation organization in a very intensively developing country is dealing with a growing amount of challenges that are posed by development, intensive activity of people all over, geopolitically volatile area, and you can add to that climate change challenges such as very long heat waves. All these create a framework that when fires break, they are very, very intensive. And this is what we had during the month of August. And one of the iconic images that I collected during the first week of the fire is this close-up of a chameleon that barely survived thanks to the fact that it was living around a spring, a very beautiful spring in Mount Tayasim. And the temperatures were so high that it actually reached the ground to cool itself. Sadly, this chameleon, together with another 5, 6 individuals, perished after a few hours. And this just shows how difficult these climatic changes are on the habitats and their inhabitants. So I will have a quick rundown, give you a quick rundown about Mount Tayasim. I'm also involved with a lot of videography, and you can see this aerial of Mount Tayasim. This is basically a woodland comprised of Mediterranean scrub and pine forests. And one of the most majestic mammals that we have in this nature reserve is the Persian fallow deer. Persian fallow deers were hunted down by the end of the 19th century when firearms reached the Middle East, and they were considered extinct. During the 70s, a few individuals were brought to Israel from Persia. I think the last airplane after the fall of the Persian Shah contained a few crates with these majestic mammals. This is an adult male that was released in Mount Tayasim about 10 years ago as a part of a scheme of reintroduction of Persian fallow deers. And I love this shot because, you know, a lot of people ask, why do fallow deers have such long horns? And I never answered, because when you get itchy, they're an amazing tool to itch in hard to reach places. So this is an adult male. This was shot during summertime. And one of the amazing features and the reasons these big mammals are brought back into the Israeli landscape is because they are the best mean to control vegetation. These herbivores simply reduce the amount of vegetation and potentially they decrease the potential of fire. So here you see that this male buck is also scratching other parts of the body. I was quite surprised to see this. And this is one of the reasons I love doing videography, because they help you learn and understand how wildlife, vegetation interact. And this was an amazing thing. And when I heard that the fire is breaking, is intensifying, I immediately went to check out the situation. By the way, this is another beautiful tropical butterfly, one of the most colorful we have in Mount Tayasim. I'll soon remember the English name for this butterfly. And it's a territorial one that specializes on strawberry trees. And I will show you these trees later on. Now, very important to understand that what's happening in the Middle East is not unique to the Middle East. The previous summer in the Northern Hemisphere, and also the previous summer in the Southern Hemisphere, was one of the most severe summers or years of forest fires all over the world. And you can see the intensity of fires in the Amazon, in Africa, in the southern part of Africa, in the United States, eastern and western parts of the United States, and also Siberia, and of course, Australia. So apparently, we are confronting one of the most harshest challenges that affects not only wildlife, vegetation, but also people. And we must understand that controlling or making sure that these fires are limited is of great importance, because the more areas being burned, the more volatile communities become. And when communities are volatile and under threat, people migrate. And large migration of any species creates a lot of problems. This is a satellite view of the fire in the Jerusalem Hills. And you can see the high intensity areas, especially in the Nahal Kisalon basin, where temperatures reached 100 of degrees, meaning everything is burnt completely. Nothing survives. And to our surprise, the area that is in the southeastern part over here, where my arrow is, where Mount Tayasim Reserve was burnt and damaged, but to a lesser extent. And the question is why? And what the researchers found out is that when the forest has many species of trees, the intensity of the fire is usually decreased. If it is homogeneous, comprising of only pine trees, then the intensity is tremendous. And what you can see here is that the high intensity areas are usually pine forests that were planted by the JNF, which use pines as a go-to tree in order to create a quick growing forest. And the area with a low intensity is a nature reserve that is managed by the Nature and Parks Authority, where ecology is the directive. And this is one of the most important lessons when we manage and conserve. You can either create a landscape which is ethnocentric, useful for people, or ecocentric, where the ecology of the ecosystem is in focus. And this is one of the most important lessons. And if we consider ourselves a part of the natural system, then we should strive to plan, design, plant ecocentric. And this is the best lesson. And you can see how not only the fire is low intensity, but also scattered. It's not covering the whole area. Okay. Here you can see another display. I won't go into this, but this is the size and the magnitude of this fire. And you can see the clouds. It was a 5-day blaze that at its peak included all the fire brigades in central Israel, all the police in central Israel, and also the Air Force. All joined hands to deal with this fire and make sure it does not reach the outskirts of Jerusalem, and especially Hadassah Hospital, which is right on the border of the Jerusalem hills. And here you can see a close-up of how this fire looks like. And you can actually see, this was taken as I was driving along the fire breakers, how with the hot air, the fire travels all over and ignites all over. This is something that's very, very hard to control. And the aftermath is devastating. And here you can see the strawberry trees that are one of the unique and beautiful trees that grow in the Jerusalem hills after they're completely burned. And here, this was taken a day after the big blaze in Nachal Nekufa, and you can see one of the airplanes still tackling some of the fire, the remaining fire spots. And you can see the size of the area, and you can also see the danger the fire poses to all the settlements that are situated in this beautiful, lush green Mediterranean landscape. One of the first stages of recovery of any forest, and especially pine trees, is the dispersal of seeds. And pine trees, one of their specialties is actually having the acorns explode and disperse new seeds. And here you can see these 3 acorns that would just burst and sent a few hundred seeds all around them. So one of the things we're really afraid of is what will happen in the next few years. What will happen to the germination of pine trees? Will they cover the whole area? And this is something we're watching very, very closely, and we don't know the extent of this phenomena. And we hope that because it was the seeds were dispersed during August, many of them actually burned, and they will not germinate in the next few months. And we will see this. We will be able to follow and see the situation. So these are the first days after the blaze. Very, very depressing. A layer of 20 to 30 centimeters of ash, a lot of smoke, and most of the wild animals that could escape, such as mammals and birds, simply left the area. And the smaller animals, such as the chameleons, had to stick around. And here you have this example of how so many little creatures perished in the fire. These were very, very heartbreaking images. And, I feel obliged to share them because although fires are a typical or a regular phenomenon in the Mediterranean area for more than 10,000 years, when the magnitude and the land cover is so vast, the damage is very, very to see. And here you can see another area that was taken during the first weeks. And you can see how the whole area is burnt. One of the interesting features is that a lot of the archaeological and agricultural heritage sites have been uncovered. And you will see that these features have an enormous effect on the way the landscape and the ecosystem recovers. Here you can see another angle that shows all the ancient agricultural terraces that are typical to the Mediterranean area and are probably a part of this landscape for more than 3 or 4 or 5,000 years. These are actually much younger because agricultural terraces are always maintained by native communities. So these were cultivated before the establishment of the State of Israel. They were active. And when the state was established, most of the area was planted by pine forests. Now, this was taken a month after the blaze. And this particular day, you can see how the pine trees become orange. And this is a typical phenomena, not unique trees, but the whole landscape becomes orange, which is a very, very interesting thing. And here is where the magic begins. In arid areas and also in the Mediterranean zones, one of the ways that plants manage to survive and thrive is by having parts of their body that can collect water in the winter and reuse them in summer or in autumn. And one of the most amazing plants we have in Israel is the sea squill. The sea squill is a typical Mediterranean plant. It has a huge onion the size of a volleyball, and it can collect up to half a liter of water. So when the fire broke, it burned everything above the soil. But whatever is kept underneath is protected by the earth and the rocks. And remember, fire and the heat goes up. It usually doesn't go down. It goes down just a little bit. So if these bulbs are a few centimeters beneath the ground, they will survive. Not only that, usually these bulbs have to compete for light with woodland. And now suddenly, look at that. They receive as much light as they want. And not only that, a lot of the insects that might have been burnt or damaged return from adjacent areas to collect pollen and nectar. So you see these wild bees having a party just as the sun sets. And this is the moment that after such a terrible blaze, you become optimistic. And you also think, you know, where did people get the idea of afterlife? And this is it, okay? Complete annihilation, and suddenly everything comes back. And not only the wildflowers, such as the sea squill, this is the strawberry tree. And it is a typical Mediterranean plant that can deal with fires. The root system is still alive. So a month after the blaze, you get these amazing red crowns of shoots coming out of the ground through the ash. And it's a celebration of life. And I measured the rate of growth. They grow 10 centimeters, which is about 3 inches a month. And if you calculate this rate of growth, you can understand that these trees will reach their original size in 5 years and catch up and grow further on unless they are burnt again. So this is one of the iconic pictures I took from my point of view of how the forest rejuvenates. Now, because I'm a videographer, I like taking shots of plants, but nothing like mammals. And here you can see the first clues that the area to life. On the left, you see these heart-shaped tracks. These are gazelle tracks. And on the right, you see this big carnivore. This is the striped hyena. And they all return. The first mammals that return are male bucks that want to reclaim their territories. the hyena is attracted to all the dead small animals that were left after the fire. So they thrive on these casualties. As we go into autumn, this is the Israeli autumn. You know, it's a harsh autumn. Usually autumn is very warm. October can reach temperatures of 30, 35 degrees. But then the next bulbs in line start flowering. This is a St. Peter's saffron. And it's a beautiful, delicate plant. And you can see how it's growing inside this slowly recovering woodland patch on Mount Tayasim Nature Reserve. And you can see the surroundings. Suddenly you see that the trees are coming back to life. Amazing process. And it made me want to come back on a regular cycle to see how the site is recovering. Now, the forecast for this winter was a very dry winter. And this was very worrying to a lot of the people who are concerned about the recovery of the ecosystem in the Jerusalem Hills. But during October, November, December, these were one of the driest winters we've had in the last few years. And this was very depressing. But as January came in, something changed. And we started getting proper amounts of rain. In some cases, we had real downpours. And this is a photograph showing the intensity of the flooding. And what was quite amazing to see is how all the ash is washed downstream. And as impressive as it is, it's also worrying because remember, recovery needs nutrients. And if they're all washed by intensive rains, what will happen? And here comes the interesting story. Because of the old terrace system, much of the runoff was actually managed thanks to ancient structures, man-made structures that was developed in the Mediterranean area basin for thousands of years, exactly to deal with water retention, preventing flooding, and also collecting the water and making sure that the water stays where it meets the ground and it doesn't flow uncontrolled downstream, taking all the nutrients away and the earth away. And these narcissus are a fine example of the next cycle of geophytes, of bulbs that flower into when we go into January. So now we're already 4 or 5 months after the blaze. And if I could just convey the smell, the scent of these flowers, this is one of the most intensive scents we have in the hills of Judea and Jerusalem. And in this case, they were just down in the stream bed. And you can see the lush situation that was created by these winter rains. One of the amazing features, you know, when you have catastrophic situations, you sometimes get very unique phenomena. And this strawberry tree that you see here that is growing very intensively, you see the leaves are now green. Suddenly I noticed something very interesting, a kind of a golden color around the trees. And when you look closer, you suddenly see a fungi. This is called fire fungi that actually thrives on ash. So here you see a fungi that is seen only after severe fires. And when I saw that, I remember that the previous time I've seen this fungus was in the big Mount Carmel blaze in 2011, I think. And it was a November blaze. And during December, January, we had the same fungi. So this is quite an amazing feature. There's a beautiful article also in the, I think in the New York Post about these fungi that are typical, and they are observed also in North America after the big fires in California. And here we see another geophyte, which is a very unique geophyte. This is a bee orchid, and apparently Mount Tayasim is exceptionally good for bee orchids. And, you know, thinking like a bee, I would say, wow, this is a sexy bee. Look at that, look at the wings, nicely wide open, and look at this beautiful chocolatey colored body. You know, it's better than the real thing. And this is how bee orchids attract their pollinators. And when the bees are busy doing whatever they think they're doing to this beautiful bee, here on the top, you can see they have a special part of their pollen that is stuck to the head of the bee. So the bee will move, copulate with this bee orchid, move to the next one, and transfer the pollen from one orchid to another. So again, we see that a lot of these orchids now do not need to compete with anybody for sunlight. So we see a growing amount of flowers, such as these anemones, that are growing with no competition. This means that this landscape is open now for a variety of biodiversity and plant diversity, which did not exist before the blaze. The second thing that you can see here with this aerial is how the ash is trapped by the terrace system. And you can see how this beautiful stream bed is converted into a nutrient trap. And the beautiful germination of all the annuals is a proof to the quality masonry and expertise of the ancestors that built the system. So we hope that this will actually intensify the rate of recovery. This is another interesting area, and what you see here are remains of an ancient farm. Now, here, this is a farm situated on the hilltop. And you can see the intensity of germination here is just as strong as in the ravines inside the stream beds. And here we see how human activity, ancient human activity, affects this specific ridge. For hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years, people lived in this beautiful farm, little farm, with their livestock, and creating a very intensively organic surrounding. And even after maybe 300 or 400 years that this has been a derelict, you can see that the earth remembers, and it still retains a lot of its organic composition, although nobody lives here for maybe a few good hundred years. Okay, so this is probably a very old farm unit that destroyed a few hundred years ago. You can see here, this is the central building, and you can see the whole system around here, and you can see how all the area that was very active by people is full of nutrients, and the germination is peaking. This is another area that shows how in many other places, this cycle will take time. And the big question is, what will, in this case, JNF do? Because this area, specific areas, the high intensity area that was burnt is managed by JNF. And we try to influence. You must remember that SPNI is an NGO. It has very little land that we manage and control. But we do have a say in committees, and we are a part of the discussion here. And we hope that a lot of the knowledge from the Mount Carmel blaze and other places will be implemented here. Meaning, first of all, let nature do its course. Observe. Study what's happening in this specific site before we decide to go in and start replanting. Most of the things will germinate independently. And here you see another part of the area that was burnt this year. This is an area of Bata, which is a plant system based with a lot of low-lying bushes. These low-lying bushes usually are an amazing habitat for bulbs, and these are anemones, and you can see this amazing red carpet, and it is a blaze of color. And this was taken a week ago. So we're about 8 months after the blaze, and there is a lot of room for optimism. And you can see also that the bushes, although they are burnt, they are now germinating very quickly from seed pods. This is another bee orchid. So I really recommend for whoever loves plants and is interested in botany. Bee orchids are an amazing group to study and photograph and follow. This is the yellow bee orchid, another typical bee orchid of the Jerusalem Hills, growing in this patch of anemones. So this was quite a fantastic Shabbat where I went for a walk with my wife and dog, and just enjoyed this this beautiful thing. Now, the big question: what's with the big animals? Happily, I'm very happy to say that last week this is a video snap from a video I'm going to show you soon of a female Persian fallow deer. And not only that they've come back pregnant. So you see this female, you can see she's got this nice tummy. So she's about 4 months into her pregnancy. I hope that in 2 months she's going to have a nice, beautiful fawn. But, and this is a big but, there is very, very little cover. So the less cover there is, the less chances the fawn will have against predators, because young fawns need a lot of cover to hide in. So they have been coming back, which is fantastic. They are very weary because there's no vegetation to hide them. But here you can see them coming back into the burnt area. This is a sub-adult male with his antlers still connected. He's going to lose his antlers very, very soon, and with this very typical camouflage pattern. And this is another male that I documented. And remember that I told you that one of the most important features and the reasons why we need large herbivores is that they should do exactly what you're seeing in this photograph. You see the young shoots after the blaze coming up, and you see the fallow deer browsing on the leaves and actually decreasing the amount of flammable material. So their role is the most important role, and this is why we're so keen and for the reintroduction and rehabilitating the forest on nature-based solutions, not engineering, not intensive planting, but making sure that wildlife does its job. There's another interesting thing here. You can see the typical eye of a fallow deer. The pupil is basically a horizontal one, and it's always horizontal to the ground. When the fallow deer puts his head down, the eye turns in its socket in such a way that it always sees horizontally. Okay, sometimes I wish I'd had this feature, so when I turn my head, my eyes turn in the sockets. But this is a feature that is very typical to deer and gazelles and goats, actually, and it's a very unique feature. So this was taken last week, and you can see how the area is recovering. This video, just a minute, I hope it will run properly. Sorry, oops. Just a minute. Okay. So this is a video of the big rains in January, and as I was saying, the rain was very, very impressive, and you can see how the rain strikes very intensively, and how water starts flowing. And look at the ash in the water. The water is nearly dark, it's dark gray, black. And you can see how the ash accumulates and is retained by the old terrace walls. And this is a mountain gazelle, an Israeli mountain gazelle, and you can see how it stands in a typical way, balancing on his front legs. And he's not having a good time, but he doesn't have any choice, because this is his territory. If he doesn't protect it, he will not be able to reproduce. The Mediterranean area is a very important area for songbirds that migrate from Europe and overwinter in Israel. And here you see how the burnt seeds are a delicacy for these chaffinches and hawfinches. Not only for them, but for other rodents that might have survived. And here you can see the siskins, they're yellow colored. And this is a female hawfinch. Again, the beautiful narcissus, and they're growing in the stream beds. And again, these are the strawberry trees with their beautiful shoots coming up. Look at the droplets on the leaves, the burnt trees, the bark, but still the tree is alive. And this is the first germination. You can see that the seeds are capable of withstanding the fire. In some cases, they even they thrive on fire. And here you can see the beginning of this germination. Oh, just a minute. The last short video I have for you is a short piece that I filmed a week and a half ago. And in this aerial view, you can see how large the area that was burnt is. It's actually quite a large area. It's 11,000 dunams. And again, you can see how the germination actually enjoys the ancient agricultural system. And this is the Mount Tayasim Nature Reserve. And one of the things I do is I actually try to monitor and see who are the first animals to return. This was a blackbird, and here you can see these two beautiful does that return. One of them actually has a transmitter on its neck, and you'll see it soon. And you can see how weary they are, because there are no more woodland trees to cover them. This is a doe carrying a transmitter that was put on her before her release into the wild, so she can be monitored, and you can get a great GPS reading out of her. And here you can see them actually working and feeding on the Mediterranean trees. And this was a very delightful thing to watch and document. This is an adult fawn. It's a yearling that was still with its mother, and she was leading him back into the burnt area. So this was a very, very moving observation. And here you can see these fire fungi. Whoopsie. See, there's a problem with the video. And again, it looks like, fungi from another planet. But again, it's a delightful color, golden color, and a very fine and typical specimen to, these are asphodels, also flowering right now, and the lovely anemones. So with this optimistic images, these are the bee orchids that you've seen before. I'm going to end my presentation, and if you have questions, I'd love to have them and try to answer them as well as I can.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amir. Wow, what a fascinating presentation. I learned a lot. I mean, wouldn't you like to have this guy to dinner? I mean, he's like, they said Rabbi Kanievsky that passed away last week. They called him a living Sefer Torah. Amir, you're like a living nature naturalist. You just know everything about all this incredible biodiversity. I don't know what we'd do without you. Thank you very much. I know you were up north today and made it back in time for the webinar. So thank you. We have lots of questions, and some are in the chat. I'll try to get to them, but let's stick with the people who asked questions in the question and answer feature. So we'll just go through quickly and try to answer briefly. Were the Persian deer intentionally removed from Iran because of the revolution?
The last planes leaving Tehran were of Israeli embassy personnel and Persian fallow deer. There was a lot of cooperation between the regime in Tehran and Israel. And the good terms the Nature and Park Authority were with the Iranian authorities enabled Israel to actually import a few specimens that are the core of this the population we have right now in Israel. We have two areas that these populations were reintroduced into. One of them is in the Jerusalem Hills, and the other one is in the Western Galilee. Both are doing fairly well.
Cool. Fascinating story, the whole chapter of the Persian fallow deer getting to Israel. Rather than let the debris build, will there be any prescribed burns in the future?
This is a very good question. Prescribed burns are very typical, a very typical method in Australia and also in other places in the world. I think people are very weary of this practice here in the Middle East because usually prescribed burns are done in summertime, and they can very easily get out of control. So I think this will be a really last resort. I doubt it will be used used in Israel.
Are you worried about the homogeneity of the trees in the Yetir forest? Not exactly our topic today, but a great question.
It's a good question because yes, in general, we are always for diversity. Diversity means resilience in any system. And, in forests especially. When trees are the same species, the same age, when they burn, they will burn like hell. So the example between the nature, the Mount Tayasim Nature Reserve.
Amir, excuse me, is that background noise yours? Is there a video on?
Yeah, it's me. My wife's having a shower and it's just above my head. Just a minute.
No problem. Sorry about that. Please.
Sorry.
Please.
My wife came back home and this is my ear and the pipes are just over my head. So excuse my wife.
I hear you. No problem. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm sorry. So we were on the prescribed fires, I think, or what were we on?
Yeah, people were asking about the map. So this is the map of the fire. And again, as I said, the most intensive areas were in the pine forest area, and the area that is less intensive is where it was a nature reserves, and the whole concept of managing the woodland and forest is eco-centric. This is a very, very important issue.
Yeah. So the pine trees, are they natural or are they planted? Are any of them natural?
The Jerusalem pine tree is considered an important species to most places in Israel. There might be an area that is actually that has natural stock in Mount Carmel in the Western Galilee, but in general, it's an imported tree.
Cool. Persian fallow deer different from fallow deer introduced into Europe? Miroslav asked that from Belgrade.
Basically, it's the same species, but the Persian fallow deer is an eastern race, and it was close to extinction. So one of the important aspects of the reintroduction is basically creating another hub where this species originally existed, and hopefully it will be another population that thrives in an area that is depleted from its large mammals. The whole Middle East has hardly any remaining large mammals in the wild.
Wow. What causes vegetation to turn orange? Do you know? Lack of water?
It's not lack of water. The chlorophyll is burnt away. So what you're left with is the structure of the leaf, which is actually brown orange. So this is what actually remains from the leaf itself. This is why when you also the trees are, in fall they lose their chlorophyll and they become red.
Interesting. Speaking of red, does that strawberry plant actually bear fruit?
Yes, and they are extremely tasty, and local connoisseurs actually make jam out of them. The fruit is it's a kind of a mix between a banana and a strawberry, which is nice.
Sounds good.
Yeah, the birds love it. I love it too. And we always recommend that in suitable places this tree is planted, because in November it's one of the most important food sources for woodland birds.
I just heard on coming home tonight on the news that the Stabo Care people are offering foraging down there in the desert to the summit that's happening tonight and tomorrow with the leaders. So I'm sure you could do some good foraging out there in the hills. The red flowers, I think you mentioned they were anemones. Somebody's asking.
Anemones, correct. Poppies will be next, and maybe Jay, in a year's time, we can do 2 years into the Jerusalem Blaze, and in the next few months, next month, I'm going to also document the poppies that are going to start, because they usually start during April. Okay, so they are April flowers in our area. And there's a question here about the St. Peter's saffron. Yes, this is a crocus, definitely. It's a very typical Mediterranean flower.
And controlling the invasive plant species from colonizing the barren areas, how do you control them?
Well, this is basically manual labor. And one of the things we're afraid of is the high cost of manual labor. Now, it's always, a balance between the costs you do to prevent fires and the cost you pay to fight fires, okay, and compensate the damages. We always believe that it's better to, to deal with the problem when it's small. So one of the things we recommend is extracting these germination, the germination of pine trees when they're young, to prevent further fires.
Okay, thanks. A lot of more questions about the strawberries in the chat. People are asking if you could put that picture up of the strawberry plant. And I just saw another thing in the chat from Carol Schneider. Hello, Carol. Trying to figure out what she asked.
What is the Latin name? What is the Latin name?
The Latin name
of
the strawberry plant. Any idea?
I would check. I think maybe we can send it later, because I don't want to leave the.
Okay. Okay. If you can put that picture up while you're answering, and I'll ask you another question. Michael asked, are the streams permanent or intermittent? I'm pretty sure they're all intermittent.
They're all intermittent in this area. Israel has very few rivers and streams that flow all year round. Israel is a very arid country, and this is a good question. Yeah.
Yes, I learned in our webinar that Professor Avital Gazit gave. They're called Mediterranean climate streams.
Yeah.
And that implies the intermittentness of this. What species eat the fire fungus?
Oh, I have no idea. I haven't seen anybody eating them yet. And if I will see, I will probably make a video. By the way, you're welcome to follow me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Amir Balaban, and I put up a lot of posts concerning the fires around Jerusalem, and also post videos. So you're most welcome through Facebook or the wildlife channel in YouTube. I do put up a lot of videos on wildlife from Israel and all over the world.
Thank you, Amir. We'll go through a couple more questions. I'll also say that Avi put up in the chat a little while back a link to our donation page. Actually, from our site, for some reason, the link is broken right now. I think we're having server problems in Israel. Our server is going to be closed tomorrow. Maybe they started early. But he did post a link because you can get there directly from the Israel Gives, Yisrael Toremet site itself. And if you can't support us now, support us whenever you can. We appreciate it very much. Is there a plan to cull pine seedlings from land that's not JNF controlled? I think I've seen you do that. Have you not?
Yes, the answer is yes. This is done in nature reserves, and this is probably going to be done by a JNF themselves. They're always, they have to decide whether to do it when they're young or to wait when they grow and they can actually earn a little bit of income, because when the trees are larger, they can be sold. So this is an economical question. I always advise to take them out when they're young. There's another question about the fungi here by Rosalind Schoger. The fungi are a very important part in the reconstruction of the earth. Remember, if there is a large layer of ash and it's not washed away, it needs to be decomposed. And apparently the fungi are doing a very important job. And I believe that it's a very important part of the returning of the balance system to the burnt area.
Cool. A natural water hole nearby or in this park? Any natural water sources in this area?
Yes, there are very few springs, and they are a very important part of the ecosystem. A lot of wild animals will reach these sites at night to drink, such as fallow deer, predators, mammals. They will come to drink, definitely.
Controlled burns, I think we talked about that, Latin names. Is the narcissus native to Israel?
Yes, it is, and maybe in future talks we'll put in the Latin names.
Mm-hmm. So what has enabled this terracing to persist for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years? And you know, people, and I've seen this in New England as well, not quite as developed, but even in the States, probably around the world, terracing is a great way to stop erosion and create farmland. Is it just a question of ancient engineering?
Yes. First of all, terraces are not unique only to the Middle East. You can find them all over the world, wherever ancient agricultural communities thrived. This is a typical mean to preserve earth and also manage water. It's one of the first means of water retention. So this is a very common ancient practice. Because Israel and the eastern part of the Mediterranean has such a long history, then it's a very, very prominent feature in the hilly landscapes all over the Middle East and the eastern part specifically. So yeah, it's something that is very typical, and it's been preserved, first of all, because it has been used constantly until about 100 years ago. And in some cases, in some places, these systems are still active. And in Jerusalem, one of our conservation battles is to preserve these areas for future generation. And not only to conserve them as a living memory, but as an active subsistence for local people. And our Arab partners in Jerusalem, some of them actually still work these terraces. And some of the most beautiful olive groves in the Jerusalem hills are being taken care of local communities, Arab, Jewish, some by JNF, and also in Gazelle Valley Park. We have a whole program that's focusing on teaching young children and volunteers how to rebuild these agricultural terraces. And every year, especially during spring and summertime, we renovate all these terraces as a part of the management of an urban wildlife site. The big question we have is, how can we manage such expanses in the hills of Jerusalem? And this is a big challenge because no one at the moment is focusing on that. Setting aside a few sites that still retain and are managed in such a way that these systems are well conserved. This is, I think, one of the biggest challenges we have concerning traditional agriculture in the hills of Jerusalem.
Thanks. And Michael pointed out what I was going to add myself, which is that when you build the terraces, you also clear rocks and boulders from the agricultural fields to create the retaining walls. So there's that. Look, we're over the time. A couple more questions in really just a sentence, and I'll finish with my favorite question. Do you happen to know the family the strawberry tree belongs to?
I can look it up right now.
Yeah, don't look it up now. We'll find it. Wadis in Arabic are riverbeds. Intermittent streams, I guess, is the intention. Are there predators of the Persian fallow deer?
Yes, there are, especially when they're young. The fawns are susceptible to jackals and hyenas, and definitely, yeah.
And a question about, aren't they building houses in the area? What is preventing encroachment? Wow,
Good
that's
question.
a whole nother webinar, but go
Yeah,
for it.
but that's what SPNI is for. Exactly. You know, we're going to make it short. We have people that their job is to sit in the committees, in the planning committees, to make sure there's no encroachment and the development is sustainable. We don't always succeed, but this is where your support comes in. Your support comes in not only in creating the know-how and the education, but also our involvement in the whole development aspect of the whole of Israel. We have our committee members that sit in the north, in the center, in the south, and we also have our activists that are very active in such a way that there is opposition to unsustainable development. And you know, to sum it all up, it's not only about beautiful pictures and surveys and understanding the ecosystem. It's also making sure that we conserve the ecosystem that we depend upon. And this is also relevant to all the viewers and the participants here. We're very glad that you help us and you sponsor our activity, but also get involved in your local patch. Take part in your NGOs and in your conservation issues and be active and sponsor and take active part. This is what we promote, and this is what SPNI is about.
Wow, thank you very, very much, Amir. Great ending. Thank you so much, Avi. Thanks to 120 people still with us after the hour and everybody who joined. Appreciate it very much. Thanks for your support. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks with Amir's colleague, Alen Kassal, who directs the Jerusalem Bird Observatory. She's going to be talking about women in birding and some other fascinating issues. And I'll be back after Passover, May 1st, with Gitit Weisblum, our lobbyist, going to be talking politics, not party politics, but environmental politics. So thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Laila tov, Laila tov.
Laila tov. Are we off?